He's been a fixture in NASCAR for over 20 years, and part of a duo that was as popular as Batman and Robin. His easygoing style has made him well-liked among his peers. Join us on Men Behind the Wrenches as we take a look at one of NASCAR's most respected crew chiefs, Robin Pemberton. Growing up in Ballston Spa, New York, in the shadow of the legendary Watkins Glen International Raceway, Robin Pemberton worked at his family's restaurant. Then at age 23, an encounter with two NASCAR legends changed his entire life. Hello and welcome to Men Behind the Wrenches. I'm your host, Jeff Hammond. It was 1969, and the reigning king of NASCAR, Richard Petty, and crew chief Dale Inman came in for lunch. They encouraged the young Pemberton's interest in the sport. That was all Robin needed. He packed up his things and he headed south to the hotbed of stock car racing, North Carolina. From a young age, Robin, along with his brothers, had racing in their blood.
My mother and grandmother took my brother Randy and I to our first races, which are in the local track, Albany Saratoga Speedway or Malta. It's dirt now, it used to be asphalt, and that was in the early 60s. And you know, we raced everything, bicycles. I mean, we didn't have, later we had go-karts. We didn't have anything with engines on it. We foot raced, we raced bicycles. Everything we did, we just had to, we raced.
Robin and his friends hung at a local speed shop where they started to learn about cars.
A quarter mile from the house, a local speed shop opened up that sold parts and pieces, and you know, it was a friend of mine, Steve Bosley, and he was a couple years older than I was, so his parents had that part of the business. And so you got to hang around, and it's typical. Everybody works for free, you know, and that's the best way to have it if you're trying to have a good time.
Robin is probably 2-3 years younger than me, and we were just both young kids, wanted to race really bad. Robin's always had that incredible personality he's got, you know, real sharp. I really liked being around Robin. There was another fellow named Steve Bosley who was about my age, and his dad owned the speed shop and a gas station and a towing service and all kinds of exciting things for 15, 16-year-old kids to do. So we had something to eat, we had something to work on, we had a record to ride around in, plus we got to go to the racetrack.
The center of the Pembertons' lives was their restaurant, and it was while he was working there that Robin had a life-changing experience.
I was in the restaurant, and at the time, the friend of ours, Pete Hamilton, who we knew in the 60s, was driving for Petty Enterprises. He came up with his bosses, which were Richard and Linda and that whole crowd, and they stayed in the little motel kitty corner from our restaurant, ate in our restaurant. So I think I was like 13 at the time when I met Richard and Linda for the first time. But we were also impressed by the fact that you could actually make a living. We didn't know how much or how little, but there was people actually making a living working on race cars. So it's something that struck me then. It's like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Late in the 70s, Robin found himself in college, but the thought of moving south was always in the back of his mind. As
it worked out, you know, another friend of mine that was in that group of kids, Steve Neal, and he was thinking the same thing, and he was a couple years older than me. He went away to college to work on, I think he got his mechanical engineering degree, but he went away to college and moved south. A few years after he moved south, he gave the call. He said, you know, I know you like working on cars, and you had always worked on local cars. He said, but Richard's kid, Kyle's getting ready to start racing. He said they might be looking for some people that have good intentions. You don't have to have a lot of experience. If you've got blood in your veins, you know, you can give it a shot.
In 1979, I was Kyle Petty's crew chief, and we were lucky enough to win Kyle's first race in the ARCA 200 at Daytona, and saw pretty quickly that we were going to need some help because Kyle was an outstanding talent, and Petty Enterprises wanted to take him racing, and Kyle and I couldn't do it on our own, so called Robin up, and 2 days later he was sleeping on my couch and slept in terrible motels, and you know, he just picked up everything he had and put it in his Corvette and came down and went racing.
Robin came in here. He had an old Corvette. Come in, parked out front, looked out there and one of the tires was flat. Come from New York. had about a handful of tools. And I said, hey man, what are you doing? He said, I come going to go to work down here. And I said, who hired you? He said, you're hiring me. I said, okay, come on in. I mean, that time we didn't have but probably 8 or 10 people. So, you know, somebody come up, he drove all the way just to this place. In his mind, he was going to get a job. And anybody that determined, you say, okay, this guy might have something.
When he first came to work, he knew about cars, but he didn't know a terrible lot. And Steve Mill and Richie Bars and Dale Inman and everybody there, we all learned off each other. He came along the same time I did in 78, 79, and I was learning about cars, and he learned about cars. And obviously, he's done a lot better than I have. Despite his limited experience, Robin fell on the best tutors in the sport at Petty Enterprises. His racing education had begun.
He was fun to be around, and he was a hard worker, you know, and he learned and would listen, and you didn't have to. I think the schooling was that you didn't teach them; they seen what you done and followed.
There was the right way, the wrong way, and the petty way, and that's all it was. I mean, Richard would knock on you if the heads of the bolts weren't lined up, or the screw heads weren't lined up, or things weren't polished when they needed to be, or, you know, and Dale was the same way. It was all about detail. You're not going to win every race, but you're going to look good coming and going.
The lessons that Robin learned at Petty University molded his entire career. Robin spent 5 years absorbing all the racing knowledge he could at Petty Enterprises. Near the end of 1983, Robin found himself at a crossroads and decided to move on.
Richard needed to go on in order to let the business survive without him and make good for Kyle. I left and went to work for Raymock, Butch and Bob, Butch Mock and Bob Rahilly.
After working with driver Neil Bonnet at Raymock, Robin took a job with Dyegard Racing. Bobby Allison was one of the many drivers Robin worked with, but it turned out to be a grueling experience.
I think I made it about 16 months. We worked, when we got there in the morning, whenever it was, 5 or 6 in the morning, we worked all night, through the night. We built cars in 3 or 4 days. You know, they've been wrecked, or we didn't get any, or couldn't get any, or it was miserable. I mean, we literally slept at the shop, fell asleep in the cars.
When he left Dyegard, Robin reunited with Butch Mock and Neil Bonnet for a short time, when he received a phone call that would change everything.
I was home mowing the yard, and the phone rings, and Lisa answers it, and whatever, she sticks her head out and says, there's a guy on the phone who wants to talk to you. And I'm sure I didn't say anything nice, other than just I didn't want to talk to anybody. She said, his name's Jack Roush. I was like, you know, that, you know, if you're racing, you know names like that. So I went in and I talked to him, and he said, somebody had given me your name that maybe, you know, you might be interested in. I'm looking at starting Winston Cup team, and on and on. I said, yeah, I'll talk to you, you know. You always have to talk. And so we set up a meeting, or we had some phone calls and some exchange, set up a meeting.
At the same time, I had some friends at Ford that were interested, that knew I was interested in working on a Ford at that time. And they said, well, you ought to talk to Jack Roush. Well, Jack wound up talking to both of us, and Robin said, well, I do this part pretty good, and you do that part pretty good. I'll hold you up, and you hold me up.
Jack took an unprecedented route and hired both Robin and Steve.
For whatever reason, I did wind up going to work for Jack. We started working on his team in August or September of '87, and it was Steve and myself and Banjo Grimm, who had been around, and we still didn't have a driver at the time. Long story short, you know, put the deal together, and Mark was our driver.
Robin faced a new challenge as he built a new team from the ground up, but he never wavered. It was 1987. Best friends Robin Pemberton and Steve Mills set out to build Roush Racing. After a rough debut in 1988, the group put together a sensational 1989, earning their first Winston Cup win that fall in Rockingham.
I had been in victory lane there with Richard a few years before that, but This deal here, you built it. You know, I mean, you started it. You know, you did it. You know, it was yours.
For where we had been, for what we had been through, in that moment, we felt like we had justified all the insanity of the prior 2 or 3 years, you know, and the insanity was brought about by us. Nobody put it on us. We said, we're going to go racing. Jack Roush is our leader. He's got the connections. He's got the smarts. He's a great racer. Robin and I felt like we could do the job, but we felt like we needed each other to do it. So when it all finally came together, we were happy for ourselves, happy for Jack, and most of all happy for Mark, because we had a lot of pride in Mark. We felt like Mark was on the verge of being great, and hopefully we could take him to the next step.
Roush Racing's third-place finish in the points that season further validated the fact that Robin's hard work was worth it.
Everybody worked together. Everybody covered everybody's butt for him, you know. I mean, you know, we did our own pit stops. We did, you know, Steve changed tires, I changed tires. I mean, we did all that. And we worked on the cars the same. You know, we would go, he'd go in one corner and I'd go in the other, and you'd watch the car run, and you'd come back and meet in the middle.
Robin stuck with the Roush organization for 4 years, winning a total of 5 times, when an old friend offered a new challenge. Kyle Petty was now driving for car owner Felix Sabates and needed a crew chief.
You know, Kyle called, and Gary was probably getting ready to go do the NASCAR thing. And they were going to need a crew chief. So they made a phone call, and I think it was along the same time that Richard was announcing his retirement for the following year. And so I met him over there at Petty Enterprises, and we talked a little bit, and then, you know, got up with Felix and talked a little bit more, and decided I thought I needed that challenge for whatever reason.
It was the second time Kyle and Robin worked together. This time, Robin took a different approach at the job.
When I got there, I was like one of the guys. I wanted to be like one of the guys. I didn't want to, I didn't, you know, I think if you talk to any of them, that when we worked together back then, I would do as much or work as alongside anybody. I'd help them do anything. You know, I didn't want the office job. I didn't want, you know, I didn't delegate, which I needed to, and it taught me to later on. But, you know, we got in there and we worked pretty hard at it, you know.
The reteaming of Robin and Kyle was about to see big results. Robin and Kyle's first season together was a rousing success. 2 wins, 7 top 5s, and 8 top 10s added up to a championship battle that came down to the final race in Atlanta. When it was over, they finished 5th, but had become contenders.
That group didn't have the egos. We just pulled together, you know. And our deal is we just wanted to run the top 20. Then we wanted to run the top 15 and the top 10. And by the end of the year, we were running with the best of them.
But by the end of year 2, things had soured between Robin and Sabates.
Felix and I had some differences of opinion, and it's okay, you know. He was right in some areas, and I won't give him credit for everything, but I was right in some others, so, you know. But it's you know, Felix was kind of high-strung, and that's what made him a successful business person. But this business, the sport that we were in, you know, and we just had some differences of opinion, you know, and I was rubbing him the wrong way, and he owned it. I had to go.
Robin wasn't unemployed long, and by the end of the season, he had landed at Penske Racing.
We looked at a lot of guys. We had a pretty short list, but we looked at a lot of guys, and came time, we talked it over, and he said, well, go and talk to Robin, see what you can do. And, you know, I always liked Robin because he's got that caustic sense of humor, you know, that you never get tired of. And as we tell people now, it took about 9 Miller Lights to sign the deal.
For 7 years, Robin Pemberton and Rusty Wallace were nearly inseparable. The Robin and Rusty pairing led to 15 wins and 18 poles, including 9 poles in 2000.
And Rusty Wallace is one of the more difficult people to work with. He is a very tough guy from the point of view of what he expects. He expects top performance. He expects it week after week, race after race, lap after lap. He'll accept nothing less than that. And he doesn't give his guys a lot of slack. In fact, he gives them all very little slack. For Pemberton to have put up with that kind of pressure all these years is, I mean, it's remarkable. It's admirable.
Rusty and Robin were the same age, and they just clicked just like that. And it was great. I mean, we won a lot of races together.
We've got a lot of the same interests, you know. We like to ride on boats. We like motorcycles. We like cool cars, you know. He owns a jet, which is nice to ride on. And, you know, we've got a lot of the same interests.
By the end of 2001, Robin had tired of the constant demands of being a crew chief. He knew it was time for a change.
I wanted to carve out a different niche for myself, where I could be a little more flexible and still be involved and still be a crew chief wannabe, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, I enjoy just throwing my 2 cents in and trying to help, you know, and we just couldn't, you know, Rusty tried real hard, and we just really couldn't get it positioned right, where it was right for me and right for them.
I think it was probably tougher on Robin than it was on Rusty. Robin did everything. Robin went to every test. He went to every wind tunnel program that we had. He was everywhere. And it wore Robin out.
I was sad to see him go, I really was, but I understood why he left. He was just really getting burned out. You know, people think that I'm really busy, and I am. I'm on the road all the time. But think about the crew chiefs. Robin's at the race. He gets up 5 a.m. He's at the shop at 7. He's gone every single day, whether it's working on the car or at the shop or whatever. So, you know, after a while, this 36 races really put everybody over the edge, and he got tired. He got burned out.
Robin decided to move on and face his next challenge, helping old friend Kyle Petty revive the family dynasty. After parting with Rusty Wallace, Robin received the challenge of his career and another phone call from old friend Kyle Petty.
I was looking for somebody to come in and try to run the company, and when we started to make a list towards the end of the year, Robin was at the top of my list. The only problem was he worked for Penske, and he had been there for 7 or 8 years, and I knew there was no way that we were going to get him, but that was the type of person we wanted because he understood Petty Enterprises and been there.
We had talked over the years, and before Adam's accident, we had talked about something similar to this anyways. And so and when Adam had his accident, we never spoke about it again. So we picked up a conversation that we started 3 years ago. So, and then we picked up where we left off, you know. He said, look, I got people and crew chiefs, and I got this, I got that. He said, I need somebody to come do my job without driving.
Robin's career had come full circle. Now it was up to he and Kyle to resurrect the high expectations at Petty Enterprises.
It's not the same place that I left, and for better or for worse, you know, the facilities are bigger and there's more and there's, you know, a lot more people. And, but the thing that if I could instill in some of the new people that are there the same thing that was given to me or taught me when I started, that alone will make things smoother, more competitive, nicer cars.
When we brought him in, you know, I introduced him to everybody at the shop, and I said, okay, I don't want anybody to be afraid. Robin's not taking anybody's job, no crew chief job, none of that. He's taking my job. And I think everybody understood that.
I think Robin's one of the few people that could be a benefit to the Pettys. I'm not saying that Petty Enterprises needed to be turned around. I'm saying that Petty Enterprises needed to have another guy in there that they kind of groomed and had respect for and understood what he could bring. And when you get around people that you have respect for and you think a lot of, you turn things over to them and you don't even think second about it. You're on to your next project. I'm sure that's where Kyle and Richard are with a guy like Robin Pemberton. And the fact that they kind of raised him and taught him the basics of the sport through Dale Inman and Richard Petty, I think they're very comfortable with that.
Robin's immediate impact on Petty Enterprises proved his skills as a mechanic and a leader. but it is his people skills that those who know him best point to as the reason for his success.
One of the most caring, giving guys you'll ever run across. You know, it takes everything to heart, and I think to a fault sometimes, maybe that's it. He wants to do good. He wants to win. He's so intense about winning races, and I think that's why he and Rusty and the Penske organization were as successful as a group as they were.
He's just one smooth, cool dude, you know. He's got the demeanor to calm everybody down, or he's got the demeanor to fire you all up. And I was very, very comfortable with him as a crew chief.
You know, he fits in there, and he lets things happen, and he moves on and sees the big picture out there. There's not many people, I don't think, that could do that the way that Robin does.
He will be as intense as it can get when it comes down to the point where the ship is sinking. You know, he's not out there rearranging the deck chairs. He's thinking about a way to put a patch over the hole and keep on going without saying a word. And he'll come up with some funny saying or some analytic prophecy, and it'll crack the whole group up. And then I'll say, they'll realize how silly it is to be this, you know, disturbed over something so small when we really wanted to be doing something else.
I'm real proud of Robin because we grew up together, and we're still the best of friends, and he's taken on something where he can be a part of something that's bigger than what he can do by himself. Petty Enterprises affords you that opportunity, like a Dale Earnhardt Incorporated or a Chip Ganassi or Hendrick Motorsports. You go into those big companies and you can be more than you could be by yourself, and Robin recognized that. He doesn't have the big head. He's cool as can be, but he won't admit it.
Not only is Robin Pemberton one of the most well-liked crew chiefs in the garage, but also one of the most successful. His easygoing style has nurtured loyalty in his crew and driver. His younger brother Ryan has followed his lead, becoming a crew chief as well. For Men Behind the Wrenches, I'm Jeff Hammond, and thanks for joining us.